Oh. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you for showing up to class. Good morning, everybody. We have a busy morning. As always, we're midweek, right? Oh. Let's see if we can figure out the lighting here. There we go. All right. I'm sure our puppy's working here. 1, 2, and kind of a 3. Oh. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. That ain't it. There it is. Okay. Little louder so you can hear me. It's hard for you guys to hear me on average in these classes. So here we go. Let's double check that. Double check that. All right, folks. Well, good morning. Welcome to class. This is our second week in. Second week in, and I was just saying, we are midweek. Okay? Let's just jump right in. I love my morning classes. Shout out to my morning people. Woo! Good morning. It's that California sunshine again outside. It's very nice. It's very nice. I'm hoping I can get my tan back. Out in Oregon, my skin had become very pale. So I'm excited to get the tan, the color. A little bit of pigment back. Let's see if you can see that. Okay, there we go. Let's not show too much here. We don't want to spoil the show here. All right, folks. So, not Voracity, right? Where were we at our last scene? We were at scene 8, right? And I'll just go ahead and jump into that real quick for you. So scene 8 ended. Mama and Brendan were in the apartment, right? And they just had that little profound conversation after being in the bathroom and all of that. And she looks at herself in the mirror after he runs out, right? And he runs out of the room, and she's stuck there, left in that reflection, if you remember. And there was something unsettled, she touches her own chest, where she was touching his, explaining, hey, this is where your heart is, it's where your breath is, okay? And then she turns off the light, and then the screen goes dark, right? So now, that was scene 8. All right, folks, now we're going to jump right into scene 9. And I'll give you a little warning. Scene 9 is not for the faint of heart. We're building up to what is going to happen, right? So we're slowly jumping into that, and then it'll be very sudden, right? The collapse. So bear with me. It's going to be a little heavy source material, but let me just take care of this real quick. I spit my gum out. I spit my gum out. You guys can't hear me. Okay. Right. Here we go. So not Voracity. Scene 9. Let's go ahead and put this here. Put that right there. Okay. Now it's reversed. That's right. Hey, we got our building back. We need a building with a microphone. That's just gotta be. It's just gotta be, and we got it today. So now Voracity, here's scene 9, all right? This is the break. This is Mama's collapse. The break, the final little revision that we did. We went over this scene over and over again, me and my team, before we brought it to class. So I think I like the way it turned out. Of course, we're doing it together, so you let me know what you all think. So scene 9 exits into a hospital, and it's nighttime. So right from scene 8, when the screen went dark, from the nice little interaction between mama and her son, right? Now, just boom, scene 9 starts, it exits into a hospital, and it's nighttime. And all we see is the mom sitting down up against the wall outside of the hospital, right? And it's a close-up scene of a cigarette burning. And Ash is barely holding on, right? So she's sitting there smoking a cigarette, and her hand is shown, and there's a slight tremor, but she's holding it. And she inhales, she takes a couple drags. And in the background, it's kind of blurred at first, but you see shapes, black shapes, and then as it starts to unblur, you see real quickly that there's a police officer kneeling next to her. There's a nurse standing kind of in the foreground, and a doctor also in the foreground talking to each other, kind of looking over as the cop is trying to talk to Mama, right? So Mama's just sitting there. And the sound is distant, it's muffled, and the police officer's voice is finally kind of heard through this blur. Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am, can you hear me? Are you going to be okay? Ma'am, right? And she is sitting there completely disassociating, takes another drag from her cigarette, and then she kind of collects herself for a second, and she says, where am I? Right? And the police officer answers, says, well, you're outside. And then he says, real softly, he says, you're at the hospital. And she looks around, and she's still very disconnected. And kind of this small, misplaced laugh comes out of her. And she says, I just had this really bad dream. I rushed to the hospital with my son because he was sick. And she kind of shows a flicker of a smile. Then her body kind of locks up, right? And then urgently, she says, has this panicked look on her face. She says, where's my son? Right? And no one responds. No one responds. So she comes back even stronger. Where the fuck is my son? And still no response, but the doctor starts to slowly approach towards her, right? And he steps forward, and he says, I'm sorry to tell you that your son has died. And as soon as the doctor utters these horrific words, sound drops out completely in the scene, completely silent now. And the cigarette falls very dramatically from her hand, hits the ground, and she's just staring blankly forward. No reaction, really, no tears, just nothing, right? And then so in front of her, the officer is still speaking, trying to talk to her, but at this point, as the audience, we can't hear anything. It's just no sound. It's from the perspective of the mom. She's disassociating to the point where there's just no sound. She is, quite frankly, she is gone, okay? If I were to put it in Gen Z slang, it's the 1,000-yard stare, if you will, right? That's what's going on here. And she's completely gone. And if I were to put a comparison, I would say, look at Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull, right? There's a lot of use of silence in that movie to convey emotion. So that's what we're kind of doing here, of course. All right, and then the next scene, it cuts into the apartment at night. Again, there's still no sound. No sound, it's just pure silence. The door is open for her apartment, and she stands in the doorway. She doesn't move, though. She's just standing there, right? The apartment is dark. It's unfamiliar comparatively to the scenes earlier that we read in the week. And she stares inside, right? Still. Just completely still. And then the next scene after this is going to be a montage, right? It's going to be a montage of her numbing and her descent of, really just going into the devastating truth of what just happened. And again, there's no sound during this part necessarily. There might be some ambient music of some sort, but this montage is going to be a series of scenes of her pouring a huge drink of alcohol, and she's watching it and just starts chugging alcohol, right? There will be just scenes of her just chugging bottles of alcohol, emotionless, no reaction, just going with the motions, right? And the next scene will be maybe at a stranger's place, right? We're going to be just randomly thrown into someone's strange room or something, and what's being implied here is she is partaking in heavy drinking and risky sex, right? So she's having sex with all these strangers as a, really as a release to try to comfort some of the aftershock of hearing that her son died, right? But she's very numb, and again, it's very emotionless, she's just feeling the full after effect of a really powerful blow, right? And there will be another scene maybe where she's in the bathroom mirror, right? And it's very obvious that she's staring and she doesn't recognize herself. And then we'll see some illicit drug use, right? There will be some scenes where she's snorting lines of cocaine and taking drugs, doing really risky stuff, right? And so, another body of her beside her will show out of focus. It'll be very impressionistic. And in between the montage, right, of all these scenes kind of happening consecutively, there's going to be 1 or 2 second inserts of videos of animals. Now, there's videos that hunters put up, because hunters are very proud of the animals that they shoot and kill, right? And so there's going to be a series of 1 second, maybe 2 second sections of these types of videos of these young, innocent, poor little animals just being fucking shot, for no reason. And we're going to show that, right, in between all these scenes. These flashes, they repeat sporadically throughout the montage, and it's abrupt, it's jarring, but it's really conveying the sudden death, right? When it comes to human psychology, to better understand what the mom is feeling, we want to convey that, and so I feel like it was a good idea to just show some actual videos of merciless killing of these poor innocent animals. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of these videos where they go out and shoot coyotes and rabbits and whatever, just animals, small game, right? Small game. And it's just merciless. These guys just shoot these animals just because they fucking want to. Because they just want to kill something. It's really evil. Anyway, but we want to show that because that's what the mom's feeling like. Her son just suddenly fucking dies. And that's it's like the world has mercilessly decided her fate for her. And so that's how we're going to convey that. Right? And then the final image, after all of that little montage, the montage will last about 3 minutes. The final image will be her sitting on the floor and her back against the wall, probably in her apartment. And the same posture as the hospital. We're going to line it up that way. And you're just left with this stillness, this emptiness that she is feeling. And so, yeah, there you go. That's scene 9, right? That is everything coming to a head, unfortunately, in our story. But it gets better. It gets better. There's a beautiful, profound ending to this story, but, this is the hard part, right? And so, let's go ahead and break that down a little bit, if I may. Yeah, there's a lot. Let's unpackage that. There's a lot in there, right? There's a lot in this one scene 9 here, or these series of scenes rather. And it's completely polar opposite to the other scenes that we've been studying, right? Because all these other scenes are really pretty positive, and there's some creepy foreshadowing, but for the most part, you know, you just feel the love. You feel the love, and that was done on purpose. It's very intentional. Of course, as I usually do, folks, let me go check my zooms. Let's check our zoomers. I know, it's sad. I know, yeah. It's a hard part of the script to go over, but it's such a necessity that we go over this part. I know it's tough to take in. But, you know, that is life. Life is very much that way. We're good on the Zooms. Our Zooms. Hopefully our Zoom crew is doing all right. I'm so busy teaching the class, I don't necessarily check in on my Zoomers as much as I could. So I hope you're all doing well. And I was just telling one of my students to text me when the reception or whatever gets disturbed. And I'll make sure to reiterate whatever you had missed. So I'm always looking out for I got my phone right over there, so do that. But let's jump right into our little, well, this is the psychological breakdown of that scene, right? And this is how we, it's really going to touch on the screenwriting theory of how we wrote this. So this scene is not necessarily about death. Just right off the bat, let's just jump into that. This scene is not necessarily about death. It's about perception collapse. Okay, the plot event is the child dying, but the story event is the mother's mind breaking under emotional overload. Okay, that's really what the scene is about. It's how the story event has created this reaction in the mother's mind, making it so that her mind is breaking under the weight, the emotional overload, the overstimulation of pain and everything. And so let's look at that intro, right? It's that close-up up against the hospital wall at nighttime, outside. 1 minute, and scene 8, like I just said earlier, it was warm and it was happy, and there was this beautiful little profound conversation between her and her son, and it's warm colors, right? It's a warm feeling, and now we're outside and it's cold, and you know, she's smoking a cigarette, and just immediately the audience is thrown into this setting that is so uncomfortable because the rest of the scenes that they were just watching beforehand was so comforting. So the scene opens up on that cigarette, right? And what this does is it removes the spatial awareness. Okay, it forces our audience into the physical sensation. And the blurred background reflects the disassociation. Okay? And this demonstrates the theory that emotion before context, right? It's important that we convey feeling what's going on before we get all of the context, because that's how we operate as human beings. That's why our thought processes are so important, because we typically feel first before we look for context. And so yeah, right. So that's just keeping things a little more realistic. It's the close-up and disorientation, right? As I talked about yesterday. Okay, so, then that next part after that was that delayed reality, right? The delayed reality, really soaking in the disassociation that that is occurring. The mother asks, "Where am I? Where the hell am I?" Right? She doesn't know what the fuck happened. Excuse my language. I have to cuss a little bit, folks, because this is heavy source material, and it's very emotional. It's very emotional for me, and if I don't cuss, I will cry, and if I cry, I won't be able to teach. So I have to stay strong for this, folks. It's tough stuff. But the mother asks, "Where am I?" Right? And even though the audience knows the answer, it creates the gap between the audience's awareness and the character's awareness. Okay, and this applies to that principle that I talked about yesterday. Tension through delayed understanding. Right? It's important that the audience is feeling that tension, and specifically through the delayed understanding of what's going on in the scene. Right? And then it kind of goes into what I like to call the trauma response. Right? Because that's what we are showing in this scene, is a trauma response to something horrific that has happened. This is the bad dream, quote, bad dream, end quota line, right? Shows the brain attempting to rewrite reality. The sudden emotional snap, it illustrates the cognitive shock that she is in. And this aligns with our theory that we've been studying together, the internal shifts, right? The tone shift. It creates a stronger impact than external action. Okay? We're showing what's going on the inside through human behavior. Okay? And then we can jump into our, one of the most important parts of this whole scene is the silence. The silence as impact, right? As I was talking about a little bit earlier. The doctor's line is not heard, right? As soon as he says, your son has died, that line isn't really heard. The sound drops, literally, in the screen, right? The sound drops completely. And the audience fills in the meaning, okay? This demonstrates the principle of withholding information creates a deeper emotional engagement, right? Because we're allowing our audience to fill in the meaning there. Which then goes into our next scene, which was really tough, is the horrible montage, right? Now, that montage, it's not chaos, but it's repetition, right? And it's emptiness. And the risky behavior is shown really without any emotional highs. Okay? The mom's not out partying and having fun and laughing and, whatever, who cares? I'm just going to party my life away. No. This risky behavior is shown without any emotional highs. This woman doesn't know what to do. There is nothing to do. She is hopeless. She is broken. And this reflects that behavior as an expression of the internal void, right? That internal void that typically a lot of people who experience loss go through, right? This internal void. And so, of course, throughout this montage, we have the short shots inserted of the violent imagery, right? Of the animals getting killed suddenly. And that functions as the psychological intrusion, right? It's that psychological intrusion. The repetition of those scenes of the animals getting killed, that builds the symbolic meaning, right? It demonstrates the visual repetition and creates a thematic resonance, right? And so, as I was saying, it's very intentional. It's that sudden death, right? And the shock. When I see these animals getting killed, I'm shocked, right? Just like the animal. I feel the animal. I'm shocked. I'm shocked, and then I'm shocked, and then I'm dead. And that's that. That's why we decided to throw that in there. Because we really want to feel the mom. Too many times, more than not, in human psychology, just the way it works, people can sometimes get lost in the masculine and the feminine, and men struggling and women struggling with sensibility, being sensitive, being vulnerable, right? And so we're just going to cut through all of the baloney, right? And the disputes between what I'm allowed to show, what I'm not allowed to show. No. We're just going to show you straight up violent death with no reason behind it, so that we can truly understand what this woman's feeling, that her baby boy, that her son was mercifully taken away from her, just taken, stolen. And she's left desolate, right? And so the final image of that montage, right, ending in the same physical position as the scene started, with her back to the hospital wall, showing no internal movement. That's going to reinforce the visual symmetry of the whole thing as an emotional statement, right? So what are we doing throughout this whole thing? We're showing the emotion before explanation. We're showing behavior over exposition. We're showing repetition and how it creates meaning. And we're withholding, which creates the engagement for our audience. And we're showing the internal experience versus the external action. So this scene in whole, right, it demonstrates that powerful storytelling is not about the events, but it's about how the events are experienced internally, right? We want to put our audience in the mind of the mom. We want to equip our audience to relate to the mom, to feel like the mom, to imagine themselves in her shoes, if you will, right? We want people to reflect and go, man, if that was my son and he died, I'd probably feel just like her, or maybe even worse. And so that's what we were trying to do for this scene. Yeah, pretty good, right? Pretty good writing, I think. And it's paving the way for that spiritual residue to really be felt later, towards the end of the film, and of course when the film is over with and people are left to sit and reflect on what they just had bear witnessed, right? So, because there's always, this is how life is, right? There's always a yin and yang of the whole thing. As I've been saying in a lot of my classes, it's a balancing act, just like everything, right? It's a balancing act. So that's our scene 9. I apologize again. It's a little heavy, but it's groundbreaking, because it's going to lead to something that's so amazing and so full of love that it'll just nip you on the ass, and that's why it's written that way. That's how you do effective screenwriting, folks. So I got some more things to go over for you, of course, but let me check my Zoomers again. So bear with me. Here we go. Yes. Yeah. I will answer your question just right after class, if you don't mind.